Well folks, here goes my very first ever mobile phone review, and I couldn't have kicked things off better than with the Umidigi Z2. Now the Z2 is the latest flagship phone from Umidigi, and it's quite the looker, and it comes with my favorite feature, stock Android 8.1. So no extra baggage here. The Z2 comes in at a very attractive $299 price point, and being unlocked makes it an extremely attractive value for those not wanting to lease their phones on a 30-month payment plan like so many are doing these days. But what does a flagship phone that comes in at under $300 really have to offer? Well, quite a bit it turns out. If you're looking for an unboxing segment of this phone, that'll be linked up in the top right-hand corner, since we've already done that part and gone through the packaging. And we're going to kick things off by taking a look at the clean design of this phone. It has a metal surround with an absolute stunning curved glass back. The model we're looking at today is the Gradient Twilight that is reminiscent of the Huawei P20, but that's not exactly a bad thing. Now the left side of the phone features a dual SIM slot holder or a single SIM plus a micro SD card slot for even more storage. And the right hand side is where all of the buttons lie, the power button and both volume buttons. Now the bottom features the USB Type-C port that will also have to pull double duty for a headphone port with the included adapter, and that's flanked by one dummy speaker and one actual speaker. Now the curved glass isn't all that's on the back. You'll also find two cameras, a 16 megapixel and an 8 megapixel camera, as well as the fingerprint reader, all in a nice vertical line. Now something I've noticed about phones in this pricing bracket is that people are concerned about whether the phone will be too heavy and clunky or too light and cheap feeling. Well, the Z2 comes in just an ounce lighter than something like the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So it's got some heft, but without being too much, and it's also heavy enough to not feel cheap. Now you flip things over and we've got a rather impressive 6.2-inch Full HD Plus IPS screen that has a 90% screen to body ratio and a viewing resolution of 1080 by 2246. Viewing angles are great, and I've had no problem reading the screen when outside with the intensity at 70% and auto dim enabled. Oh, I did forget to mention, it has a notch. Seriously, guys, at first I was resistant to the idea of the notch, but since using it, I've gotten quite used to it, and it really just seems normal now. Now the only thing that I wish is it was a little bit smaller, since the earpiece and the two cameras on the front setup that match the ones on the back, however, mind that's very important, don't really take up a lot of room. And those dual cameras on the front also help enable face unlock, which is pretty useful. Unless of course you're trying to check notification and it loads you straight into the desktop. So we knew they were going to have to cut some corners somewhere, right? Well, I guess you could argue that the biggest cuts come from the processing power. This phone uses the Helio P23 ARM Cortex-A53 base processor and the ARM Mali G71 MP2 GPU. So it has an octa-core CPU, but with some reduced clock. Now we'll touch a bit on these in a moment with benchmarks and performance summaries momentarily. But it does come loaded with 6 gigabytes of dual-channel LP DDR4X and 64 gigabytes of internal storage, with the ability to support up to additional 256 gigabytes of micro SD storage space. But how does that package perform in the real world? Well, it was time to fire up some benchmarks and just see how she does. First, we took a look at the Antutu benchmark, and it brought this phone in at 83,569 points. Geekbench yielded rather unflattering numbers with a 790 single-core performance score and a 3648 multi-core score. Now, don't let these discourage you too much, as the real-world use of the phone, thanks to the stock Android experience in big part, is still snappy and enjoyable. Gaming performance, well, we kicked things off with Ice Storm Unlimited, and with a score of 10,712, we knew this wasn't going to be a, well, gaming smartphone, especially when we fired up PUBG. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was playable, but only at lower settings, and we still had a bit of stutter. But we did try out games like Oceanhorn and found it played very, very well. Well enough, in fact, for me to end up buying the game so I could keep playing. and games like Fallout Shelter ran fairly smooth as well. Netflix performed just fine without ever giving me any trouble, so no, it's not going to be a super high-end fast smartphone, but it does have the grunt to get the job done without getting in the way of the experience. And the large RAM capacity does help keep things from getting a bit too bogged down, even when you have multiple programs chilling in the background. Now, let's talk about the camera for a minute. In the camera department, we are looking at dual solutions on the front and the back, and both do feature a 16 megapixel and 8 megapixel sensor. Alright, I have to get the biggest gripe out of the way. As of right now, there's no image stabilization, not even simulated or digital. So in lower light conditions, you're going to need a steady hand or a tripod for these images to come out great. Now that aside, even when the lighting is even half decent, the pictures and video do come out fairly great. The dual cameras offer up the opportunity for a bokeh mode for pictures, and the problem is it basically has one area in focus while blurring the surrounding areas. Luckily, you can control the size of the focus of the area, but in my opinion, the natural bokeh from focusing on an image close by is actually better in my opinion. And yes, these sample images that you're seeing were taken mostly from a trip to IKEA to pick up a couple shelves. But let's take a quick look at the video test featuring the phone. Alright, one thing I want to mention right before we look at the test video is that for pictures we see a maximum size of 16 megapixels, which is great. However, over on the video side of things, the maximum video quality is 1920 by 1080, which is a little bit disheartening, but the video is not bad. So let's take a look at that real quick. So this is a video test of the Umidigi Z2 using the rear facing cameras, and I'm using a Manfrotto Pixie stand to hold it up there, kind of like if you were doing this with a vlog. This is the exact same test once again, but using the front facing cameras of the Umidigi Z2. This is late afternoon, the light is okay where I'm standing, so I'll give you an idea how it is. Now, audio from this phone is supplied by a single speaker on the bottom of the phone next to the charging port. You're going to be unlikely to miss a call or a notification because you simply didn't hear it. But watching a movie, you're going to want some headphones for that. Now, the Z2 does pack a pretty meaty 4,000 milliamp battery in its sleek package, which makes for a welcome amount of time away from a wall charger. The lower screen resolution and lean CPU help bring in easily an all-day battery life, and that's more than doable. Although it's worth noting that I did keep the screen brightness to the maximum of 70% with auto adjustment enabled. I typically pulled it off the wall charge around 4 a.m. when I wake up, and I never ended up putting it back on the charge until 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night when going back to bed. Now, with moderate use, I was never in fear of needing a recharge. But if you do, and you have a 2-amp charger handy, you can get back to a full charge in just under an hour and a half. Now, call quality is important in a phone. I mean, after all, it's a phone. Well, I'm happy to report that at least on the AT&T LTE network, the call quality is superb, arguably better sounding than even my iPhone 8 Plus. Now, of course, one caveat to consider is the microphone is extremely sensitive, so your other party may hear a little more of what's going on around you than you might intend. At some point, I'm sure you've wondered what's the difference between the Z2 and the Z2 Pro. Well, let's go over a few of the key differences. Now, the Z2 Pro does get you upgraded to the Helio P60, a better processor, a bit better of a camera, 128 gig internal storage, and the big kicker, NFC and wireless charging. However, it is worth noting, to make room for the receiver, Umidigi did have to reduce the battery size from its 4,000 milliamp size in the Z2 to 3,550 milliamp hour battery in the Z2 Pro. But at the end of the day, the Umidigi Z2 has done something unexpected for me. It's gotten me interested in Android again. As I was very happy I was very happy with the overall experience of the Z2. Sure, it's not a performance powerhouse when you look at the numbers alone, and you're unlikely to get very many chicken dinners in PUBG, but you will have a great social media and browsing experience. The screen is vibrant and enjoyable, and the camera action could improve with some updates. Battery life is more than solid, and while the speaker does leave a little bit to be desired, that can be easily remedied with headphones, whether it be plug-in or Bluetooth if you wish, but it's easy to see why people are going absolutely nuts over this. It's just a solid device for a fair asking price. And you'll be hard-pressed to find something more feature-rich or it looks quite as premium for under $300. Now, I may not be replacing my own iPhone 8 Plus with this unit, but I'll definitely be keeping it around just in case. Now, one last thing, if there's something we didn't cover in this review, please feel free to ask down in the comment section, and I'll do my best to address it, because this one will be sticking with me for a while. Now, this has been Keith with WCCF Tech TV, and we'll catch you in the next video.